Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is The Life of a Writer. I apologize, I have a bit of a frog in my throat today, so this probably won't be a very long video, but I thought I would talk a little about why I'm writing paranormal romance and why I'm not writing what I think might be considered more of the normal paranormal romance that readers request, which would be about vampires and werewolves a la Twilight. So I have nothing against vampires, werewolves. I'm not a fan of zombies in particular, but those really aren't where my interests lie. And I think those stories have been pretty deeply discovered by many other authors, maybe. And I don't know if you would consider my paranormals more along the lines of Gothic, where you're in some place creepy and there may be spirit activity. So maybe my paranormal leans more toward Gothic romance. We'll go with that. But the reason I am exploring the idea of spirits and life after death is because that's something that I think many of us wonder about, especially as we get older. I know I did wonder about it a lot as a kid because I had a lot of experiences that I couldn't explain. The experiences come fewer and less often as I've gotten older because I can explain more of the things that I see and hear. But there are still a few unknowns out there, like what happens after we pass on, that I think I am trying to explore in my romances. Now, in Passion Restored, I've mentioned that Angela she is trying to explore the idea of spirit activity and life after death because she lost her father, and that changed the course of her life, brought her closer to her mother. She gave up a lot of her plans, and that plays a big part in that story. Whereas Nico, he was raised more logically in a business capacity. He never really thinks about much aside from, the things he's dealing with in the business world because his family has this corporation and he doesn't quite have the time to noodle over paranormal experiences and never really maybe experienced anything that he couldn't quite explain. So when the two of them come together, you've got someone who, she's not a believer or disbeliever, but he's just an outright skeptic. And the exploration of that, he starts experiencing things he really can't understand. And he and Angela are brought together by forces that they believe may have brought them together as a couple, and wonder if their attraction is really real or if it's something that's based upon being brought together by these outside forces. So I thought that was an interesting thing to explore in that story in Passion Restored. Now, part of the reason for that is the experiences that I had when I was younger. And today I'm going to talk about one experience in particular. And I have talked about this online previously, just in a brief way, but I've mentioned I have a couple pictures to show. So this first picture is one that I've posted, and mainly I'm showing you this because I want to show that it is an actual photograph. Right here you can see this is my grandmother. This would be my mother, and then this in the center would be me. So just get an idea of how my grandmother looks here. The reason I bring up that picture and that grandmother is that later on, this is when I'm 18, I'm actually living in my grandparents' house. It was taken in 1982, and this is a picture that I sent to JT. I believe the photograph was taken on a camera with 110 film. I'll have to look that up just to be sure. But you can see I'm standing, let's see here, there's a pool table, and off to one side here, you can see there's something on the film. Now I will pop a scan of this picture in so that you can get a closer look. But if you look at this section over here, this looks like my grandmother's face. Now, When the picture was first taken, I don't remember seeing that. I don't know if it's something where, as maybe the picture was fading over time, the colors shifted, and that's my logical brain trying to determine a reasonable answer to why I think I see my grandmother's face on this picture when she's clearly not in the picture. She may have been taking the picture, which was another thing I was considering, is maybe it was some kind of a reflection of her face somewhere. It's entirely possible. Now, I am not a strong believer or disbeliever in the idea of life after death. I am a bit of a skeptic, you might say, but I also believe that scientifically, when we pass on, there may be residue left. And I have no way to explain any of this, either scientifically or otherwise. So I'm not going to go too far down that path. But suffice it to say that I neither believe nor disbelieve. I feel like it is possible that there's something beyond life that we don't understand, and we haven't quite yet figured it out, and we may never figure it out. Another reason I bring up this grandmother in this particular picture is that she passed away when JT and I were living about 1,500 miles away, and I really, once we got married, I only saw her a couple of times. So it was something that I felt some regret over not getting to know her better as an adult. I did know her quite well as a child because she and my grandfather on that side were like a second set of parents, because they, if my mother went to visit her family in Ireland, my dad would be working and I would stay with my grandparents. And in this picture specifically, we are in a motel in San Diego, which my grandparents either owned or managed, and we were living next door to them. So as a very small child, there's a family story that I would spend the day with my grandparents. I would fall asleep in their little apartment. Our little apartment was right next door. I'd wake up in my own bed the next morning, and I'd go back to my grandparents and say, why did you let them steal me? Because I don't know if at that point I thought they were my parents, and my parents, I'm not sure who I thought they were, but it was obvious that I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and up until I was 18 and got married. And then I only saw them a handful of times before they passed away. So when my grandmother passed away, I did have an experience where I had either just fallen asleep or I was dreaming, and I dreamt that she was sitting on the edge of my bed telling me that everything was all right, that, whatever happened, I didn't have to stress about it. Everything was all right, because I don't even remember if they had an actual funeral for her. I don't think she has a grave anywhere. She may have been cremated. I had so much going on other places at that point in time that we couldn't afford to come back and everything to see the family at that point. So obviously there's a lot of regret attached to that. And maybe that was why I was dreaming about her, because I was feeling that regret. And in my dreams, she was telling me, it's okay, don't worry about it. And at the time, I was in my 20s, and I was probably still leaning more toward the believing in spirit activity than not, because I hadn't experienced so many more things over the years, that it was very comforting to me. And something similar happened when one of my cousins passed away. He was about 21. I'm not sure if he had just turned 21 or he was just about to turn 21. I think it was the month of his birthday. He was in a fatal auto accident. And I also dreamt about him at one point, where he came to me and he said everything was cool, because we were very close in age and we were close growing up. So I've had a few experiences like that. I remember falling asleep one night where it felt like not a breeze blowing across my face, but more like somebody had actually just stroked the hair off my forehead. And it was a very strong feeling. And at the time, I felt like maybe it might have been a spirit of a relative or something. Now, my mother passed away about 13 years ago this year, I think. No, it'll be 14 years this year. When she passed away, I did not have any of those experiences. I was sitting with her when she passed away. Some people say they can sense the spirit leaving when that happens. I did not. It was, as I told my aunt at the time when I called to tell her, it was like she just stopped. And I did not feel any residual sense of her presence there. She was just, her body was there and she was not. So my experience with losing loved ones over the years has definitely changed. I have a very strong memory of going to my first funeral when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and that was a terrifying experience. So it is not something I try to think about often, but it seems to be creeping into my thoughts more often as I get older. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm writing the type of paranormal romance that I am, maybe the gothic romance with it, spirit activity, and it's my way of exploring what comes next, maybe. So I just thought I'd talk a little bit about that today, and like I said, I will pop in images, the images that I've shown you. I have scans of them. I'll pop them in so you can get a closer view. And I'm still not clear on this photo. I still have enough doubt about whether that is the photo itself degrading, if something happened over time. It is not something I changed. I am not at all technologically savvy enough to do something like that and to do it on actual film. I should go back. I don't know if I could find the negative. It would be interesting to see if it's on the negative as well. For anyone who's more used to digital photography, back in the day when we had regular cameras with film, we would have to take them to someone who would develop the images for us, and then we would get an envelope with the prints that we requested. Sometimes we'd get 1 or 2 copies if we wanted to share them, and then they would give us the negative strips that they developed for photos from. So a majority of people who had these they were basically point and shoot cameras, the 110s, the Instamatics and things like that. We had no way of knowing how to develop the film. We just took it in and let somebody else do it. So I'm the kind of person that just took my roll of film, dropped it off at, if I wanted it quickly, I would do one of those Fox photo booths like you see in Back to the Future. But more often than not, there would be a place at your local grocery store or department store. There would be a counter where you could drop off your film, and it would normally take about a week or so. I think they would have to send it out to a processing center, and it's not something where I actually understood the process for myself. I have a little bit more knowledge of it now, but I've never done it for myself, and a lot of the photography I do now is digital. I do have some instant film in the house. We do have the older cameras that take regular 35 millimeter 110 type of film, but we don't really use them anymore. And I don't know how many places will actually develop them for you. So if that were the case, then we might have to figure out how to create our own developing studio. But all of that to say, I don't have the knowledge to be able to alter this picture at all. So if something happened to the picture, it was not as a result of me. It was probably something in the film or in, like I said, the picture may be fading and something happened to the different color tones in the image. And there could be a lot of reasons, realistic scientific reasons why this image would show up. But the fact that it looks so much like my grandmother's face is what kind of makes me pause and wonder, is there something else going on? And that is the kind of thing that I'm exploring in my paranormal romances. The Restless Spirits series, 6 books, will take place over the course of a series of couples who are exploring different aspects of their lives and romances at different times in their lives. The first book deals with a couple in their 50s. The second book, Restless Spirits 2, which I haven't yet revealed the title, that will have it will be a couple that was mentioned in the first book, but they're in their 70s. They've been married for a long time, and they're exploring the idea of their romance at their point in their marriage and what may be happening, because she's dealing with postmenopause. She's in her 70s and doesn't know how much life is left to her. And, how does she handle the things that are happening around her that she can't quite explain? Are they things that are happening because of what's going on in her body? Are there things happening outside of herself that she can't quite understand? And that's how book 2 is going to work out. Book 3 is going to be a younger couple, probably in their 30s-ish. It will take place in Hollywood, and book 3 actually came about, is the reason the series came about, I should say, that I had an idea based on going to a convention for the TV show Supernatural. I had a fan experience that turned into a story, and I am not exploring the show Supernatural and all of the different paranormal supernatural creatures they dealt with, the demons, the angels, Wendigos, all of that. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is the actors themselves and fan experiences, and there are still outside forces at play. There might be a little bit of a demonic energy in either book 3 or book 4. Book 3 is written. I can't remember if I made that more demonic or more just ghost-like, spirit-like. I'm going to be revisiting that soon to get it ready to publish. So book 3 should also be out this year, also paranormal, but it will be dealing more with Hollywood and what's happening to this younger couple in that place. But this couple also relates to the rest of the background characters in the series. So everybody that you're meeting in book 1 and book 2 will carry over to some extent into book 3. And then I still have another 3 books beyond that planned. And I do have ideas for where those books are going to go. And I don't know if the series is going to get longer, because there are other side characters that I have taken out that I don't know if their stories are going to be worth telling at some point. But overall, the idea for the series came about because I went to a supernatural convention. I had a fan experience. Obviously, I have been questioning paranormal aspects of life. And book 3 has evolved from, it was more of a superpower type of situation, but it's turned more into a spirit and something happening as a result of that, or paranormal activity. Honestly, at this point, I don't know if any of what I've just said makes sense. JT and I just recorded another podcast interview, which is why I'm dressed up again. I'm recuperating from having visited my kids and grandkids yesterday, which I love visiting them, but it's almost an hour drive each way to their house. And with all the traffic and everything, I'm pretty exhausted by the time I do that. So I need at least a day to recuperate. So my mental processes are probably not as streamlined as they could be, not to mention my normal habit of talking around what I'm trying to say. So my apologies if this doesn't seem like it's pretty streamlined and understandable. If anything I've said has made sense, awesome. But I would be interested to know if you are a believer, a disbeliever, if you are, like I am, somewhat neutral about the idea of maybe life after death, of spirit activity. Are you a fan of Supernatural? Because if you are, welcome. I have been a fan of the show. I think I started watching in the first season back in 2006. I've talked about that a little bit, and I will probably do a few more videos in the future relating to that as book 3 gets closer. But in the meantime, I would be interested to know, if you are a Supernatural fan, what was your favorite episode? There are a lot to choose from. So I thank you for joining me on this little ramble through the spirit world. If you are looking at the images on that I'm including here of my grandmother and the potential of seeing her face in a picture where she was clearly not part of the picture. And if you have other explanations, either spiritual or not, I would be interested in hearing those. Please do check out Passion Restored. I would love to know more about how you feel as to whether Angela and Nico should have been more worried about spirits bringing them together and not maybe that their relationship had developed organically. Does it even matter? So I have so many questions. If you want to answer some of them, that would be awesome. But again, I thank you for joining me. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend so far. We have beautiful weather here in northern Nevada, as you can see, but we are about to potentially have a few days of snow. So you'll be following along with my adventures over the next few days as we see how this storm plays out. I have no idea what my video for tomorrow will be, but I need to go get this posted, and I need to get back to my beta revisions because book 2 is never going to get out there if I don't get it finished and into editing. Thank you for your time. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Cassidy Carson, and this is The Life of a Writer.